cooking for a family with kids helps you in releasing yourself from bullshitty stuff, right?
Økologisk oksebryst. Sometimes I just need to get dinner going without really knowing where I'll end up. So today I have some breast, some beef breast, and I'm just gonna get it braising. And then we see. Potato, mash, rice, who cares? For now it just needs braising. And I'm gonna use the pressure cooker because the pressure cooker allows me to get somewhere pretty fast. I cook professionally in some of the best restaurants in the world. My own restaurant, Relæ, was awarded a Michelin star in 2012. When you cook at an ambitious level, there's a built-in trap that can sometimes make you forget what cooking is about. Ja, min skat. There is always some sort of competitive race going on. I find that today it has become increasingly superficial in the sense that it's more visual more than anything. But back in the day, it was also superficial in the way that it was competitive and very much focused on being ahead of the curve compared to anybody else. And I myself have very much fallen into that trap. This is why I think that home cooking is the real test to whether you're a good cook or not. Because in the end, you can scrape off all the superficial stuff that makes no difference. When you focus on what is the real return of investment in the time that you spend in cooking food, you, I believe, will stick to what makes the difference, and that is not the superficial part, whether it looks good or not. So when I cook for my family at home, it really looks fantastic. Sometimes it does, but also sometimes it can be a little brown. It can be a little, ugly delicious, as they say. But in the end, it's tasty because a few small things make that difference. And what I find is that when you put a ton of effort into making it look good or making it look innovative or making it look fancy or whatever, you lose a little track of what is important. Cooking without a plan is basically my favorite way of cooking.
In the end, when you cook professionally, you have to ask yourself, particularly today where staff costs are by far the most expensive thing about running a restaurant, is whatever you do, it really needs to have a purpose. It really needs to make sense. That's why home cooking always wins. It's because you don't have anybody to show off in front of. At least I don't need to show off in front of my wife. So it helps you to cut to the bone. And my kids, most of the time, they just throw it at me. They just throw it back at me. They don't, I don't know. I never expect them to appreciate what we do. That's not their job. Their job is to be a pain in the ass.
I had cooked professionally for at least 5 years before I really understood what is the most important part about being a chef professionally. And it happens to be the same thing as when you cook at home. You have to be able to cook for yourself, as in the sense that you eat it and you try and put yourself in the shoes of the diner or yourself if you're serving it for yourself or whatever it is. Because when you train yourself through your palate, you taste food, you taste a dish, you go a little deeper than just looking at the surface of it. When I was starting out cooking, I was very much focused on the technicalities, whether something is looking right or not, or whether something is, whether I can chop this faster than before, or whether I can spread whatever this moves out in a particular way. Or it was all about the tactile stuff, moving fast, getting things done fast, making it look right. But in the end, I was not capable of understanding through my palate. I couldn't taste things together and say, oh, I see the combination between these things. And it wasn't before I became a sous chef at Noma in 2007 that for the first time someone was starting to require my palate to be involved. I had to taste things and start thinking, oh, okay, I see. This is too reduced. The sauce needs more, whatever. This needs more acidity. And I started building a completely different sort of perspective towards the food that I cooked, but more than anything, the food that I liked and I enjoyed. And it was not before I started going down this path that I could start combining both sort of the technical side of it, but the deeper palate-based flavor side of it, that I could make any sense of what kind of cooking I wanted to do. And that became the base of my restaurant, Relæ. Now within an hour, I'll have some braised meat, and then I'll take it from there. When I was a sous chef at Noma, it's not that we were not caught up with wanting to be ahead of the curve or wanting to be, the place was extremely ambitious. So you for sure were focusing on some of the stuff that you probably should not focus on. I realized that. The same when I opened my own restaurant. I was focusing on things that were purely based on ambition. But what I found really helped me to stay on track and make of Relæ what I find to be a good restaurant, a unique restaurant, was that I had some constraints in terms of really being adamant about making the restaurant affordable and simple and straightforward. So those constraints limited me in both how we would execute the dishes and how we would sort of conceptualize the restaurant. That meant that some of the superficial stuff had to be cut out for it to make any sense at all. And in that way, I believe that we managed to make something that was of value and not just superficial and not just fancy or trendy or whatever. So the constraints are sort of the engine for getting to the sweet spot, getting to what is important with what you do. And I think in cooking, both professionally and at home, once you don't have unlimited resources, you start getting a little smarter and doing things better. So the idea of, oh, you need so much, you need all sorts of possibilities and hands and kitchen, I don't think it's right. I think what's key is to make sure that you have constraints that you can apply yourself to, and therefore create something special and unique and authentic and your own. Because it's only within the constraints that you can grow in your own particular way. At the time when Relæ opened in 2010, I went to visit a friend that was a sous chef in another restaurant that was really high profile. I'm not going to say the name, obviously, but we went there. And I just remember that we literally repurposed the old Noma stove, gas stove of 6 burners, because it was they were changing the kitchen. So I got that old stove and repurposed it for the restaurant, basically for free. And you know, we were really scraping through to get things to come around. And I went to visit this restaurant. My old friend was the sous chef there. And they just had everything. It was an extremely ambitious project, and everything was there. And I never forget how he walked us into this hallway, and in the cupboard, there was a big cupboard, and he would open the cupboard, and inside was just boxes, untouched, with pots and pans that never had been used before. And I was like, what are you going to do with all these things? And he's like, nah, we don't really need them. We'll use these. We're going to get to these if we ever need them. It's not useful. And I was like, mind blown. There was a full cupboard of probably 5 times more pots and pans that we even had accessible as reserve pans. And to me, while I think a lot of people would have thought that that would be sort of, you know, this is going to become a really good restaurant, to me it was more like, I prefer my own situation where the limitations and the constraints we have to make us think in uncharted ways. We have to go down paths that other people have not been to create something special. While if you have access to everything all the time, there's no reason for you to do something special. You fall into the path where other people have been because you have no problems that you need to solve. And then what do you return to is that you start solving issues that are not issues. You start making things that are overly complicated for the reason of complicating things, so you have something to solve. That's why I'm a firm believer that the simple restaurant, the restricted situation, the difficult stuff that you have to work your way through is what makes something great. Not the money, not the cash, not the unlimited resources. You can compare this to wine. You know, if you have everything completely optimal in terms of circumstances for a grape to grow, what you end up having is something that is kind of boring. But the truly special wines are the ones that have a very, very particular microclimate, the terroir, the circumstances that they have to fight themselves through, and therefore create something with great personality and great character. I believe in restaurants, and I would probably say every other business as well, whenever you have to fight your way through something to be who you want to be, that's how you create your personality. So it's obvious, and well, of course we all look towards having it the easiest possible way. That makes sense. But I don't think that it's a guarantee for anything great coming out the other end.